Hi, my name is Matt Galogli. I'm with the Warner James Group, and I want to talk to you today about massively growing your medical practice. I'm talking about 2x, 4x your practice with revenues and collections in the next 12 months. The good news is I'm not here to talk to you about building any new websites. I'm not talking to you about a Facebook program or SEO or anything like that. In fact, you can achieve this growth without adding any new patients. You can achieve this just with the current patient flow that you have coming into your practice today. Now, before I go into any of the details, I've got a very simple question for you. Do you remember the Ten Commandments? I'm not talking about the Ten Commandments that are, on the brick and have all these laws. I'm talking about the movie from 1956. It had Charlton Heston in it as Moses, Yul Brynner as the Egyptian Pharaoh, Edwin G. Robinson. It was a classic. It was on every Easter and every Passover as a kid growing up in Chicago. And I always loved that movie. It was one of my favorite movies to watch. And I was always transfixed by the movie. You may or may not remember, but basically here is the premise. Charlton Heston plays Moses, and he was a prince to Pharaoh, and he realizes that he is actually Jewish, and they have Jewish slaves that are building the pyramids and everything for King Ramsey. And he winds up going back to being a Jewish slave, and he winds up leading his Jewish people out of slavery from Egypt. And there's a scene in the movie where Moses is leading the Jews out of Egypt. They're going to the Red Sea, and Pharaoh decides that he's going to go bring them back. And so they're backed up against the Red Sea, and you got Pharaoh's armies bearing down on him. And Moses raises his hands, and the Red Sea parts, and they go and they cross over into the other side of the Sinai Peninsula. When they get to the other side, Moses drops his hand, and all of Pharaoh's soldiers are wiped out. Well, that's not where the part of the story. This is the part of the story I really want you to focus in on. And the part of the story that I want you to focus in on is now that they're in the wilderness. You see, your medical practice, if you are not getting the results that you want, is probably in the wilderness. Okay? Now, the Jews began wandering around the wilderness, and they wandered for 40 years, and they can see the promised land over on the other side, but they can't get there. They keep trying to get there, but they keep wandering around and around and around the mountain. Okay? And this is such a perfect story or a connection, I believe, to what a lot of medical practices are doing today, is that they're just wandering and wandering around the wilderness. Now, I did a quick little drawing. It's nothing fancy, but I want you to take a look at it. And so if you take a look here, I'm going to cover this part up. If you take a look here, you're here in the wilderness, okay? You're just wandering around and around and around, okay? And you want to get into the promised land. Now, the promised land is where you want to be as a medical practice. Okay, so let's talk about what the promised land is like. So the promised land is where you have money coming in. Your practice is a success. You have 6 to 9 months of expenses in the bank. You are profitable. You have the respect of your patients. You have the respect of your peers. You have the respect of your staff. Everything that you ever thought about being a doctor, you not only are able to serve your patients and help them get better and practice real medicine, but you're also successful, financially successful. Hopefully, you're able to take maybe some really good vacations for the first time in a long, long time, and living in a nicer house, maybe if you want to be a member of a club or anything like that, or giving to your favorite charities, but you can do it because you've been successful. The problem is for so many people, that dream seems almost unattainable, especially in today's medical climate. You see all the news stories all the time about how the individual practice is going away. Everything's getting bought up by the big hospital groups. Well, I'm here to tell you that that doesn't need to be the case. In fact, I want to show you how to get into the promised land. Now, before I do that, it's very important that we talk about the times that you've tried to get into the promised land and it failed. So the reality is that your ability to get into the promised land is not related to you getting more patients. It's about you doing better or more with the current patients that you have. That's really one of the keys to us 2x or 4xing a practice in under 12 months. So let's talk about this a little bit more because I think it's important, all right? So the problem that happens is that you have tried to cross into the promised land, right? So somebody knocks on your door and they tell you, okay, you need to do great SEO. So you invest a bunch of money in SEO, and you think, okay, this is going to get me into the promised land. But as you're crossing the river to get into the promised land, see, here's the river, by the way. Okay, you got to cross the river to get into the promised land. And as you cross the river, you reach a little bit too far. That SEO program doesn't work, and you get washed back onto shore. Okay, and you dry off, you dry all your gear out, you rest up, you start to save a little bit of money, and 4 months later, somebody comes knocking on your door and go, it's about redoing your website. And so you do it again, and you make that reach, and it doesn't work. You don't get into the promised land. And you try radio, and that doesn't work. And you try TV, and that doesn't work. And you try Facebook, and that doesn't work. And you try pay-per-click campaigns, you try social media, you try all of these things. You try lunch and learns, you try evening seminars, but nothing really seems to get you to a place where you can scale, where you can move into the promised land. And this is a common problem that we see as we've worked with over 20 plus practices in the last 2 years to help them scale their businesses dramatically and get into the promised land. So we have to kind of just confront the brutal facts. The reality is your ability to get into the promised land is not tied to you running another Facebook campaign. Look, Facebook is great. We use it. We have doctors that use it. SEO is great. We have doctors that use it, and it works very well. We have redone websites. Those work, but that's not what we're here to talk about. I'm here to talk to you about what you need to do to order and move into the promised land. So I want you to think about it this way. In order for you to cross the river, the raging Jordan River, and to move from the wilderness into the promised land, there are 3 distinct phases that you must go through. If you try to bypass one of those phases, you're going to wind up in the Jordan River, you're going to get washed downstream, and you're not going to have the success that you want. So what are those 3 rocks? Well, here they are, okay? The first is that we've got to confront the brutal facts. Most medical practices are in the survival mode, okay? You're in survival mode if you're making less than $50,000 a month in collections and revenue, okay? You're in survival mode if you have less than 1 month savings in your bank account to handle your operating expenses. You're in survival mode if you're getting less than $150 in actual physical reimbursement from your insurance companies for the patients that you come in and see you. Okay, you're in survival mode if you stay awake at night, staring up at the ceiling, bile boiling up in the back of your stomach, wondering if you're going to make it. Now, the funny thing about the wilderness is you keep going around this mountain over and over again, and eventually, in that movie, The 10 Commandments, the people, even though that they had been let out of slavery, and that slavery was awful in Egypt, after wandering around the wilderness over and over again, they eventually start to say, you know what, let's go back to Egypt. Let's go back to being into slavery. At least then we knew that we were going to get some kind of food. Well, I want you to think about it this way. Egypt is where you were before you opened up your own practice. Egypt is working for the big hospital group, okay? It's selling out your dream. It's giving up on your dream. And I don't want you to go back to Egypt. The promised land is where you want to be. You want to be in the promised land right here, where you have all the things that you've ever hoped and dreamed for in running a medical practice. You're taking great care of your patients. You're making lots of money. Again, you have the respect of your peers. You have the respect of your family. You have the respect of your patients, the respect of your coworkers. Okay, so that's the first step, is survival. Okay, so we have to confront the brutal facts. Now, what we want to do is the next rock we're going to jump to is stability. And here's what most people do, is they say, okay, I want to scale. I want to scale my practice really, really fast. And what they do is they stand on the shore and they jump to scale, and they miss the rock and they fall into the river, and then they get washed ashore, okay? We don't want that to happen anymore. There is a particular step and process to go through. It's just like getting one of your patients healthy again. If you had a patient that came in and that patient said, I want to get healthy, type 2 diabetic, I've got high blood pressure, I weigh 400 pounds, you wouldn't just all of a sudden take them off their medications, right? That would be death to them. You want them to lose weight. They've got to change their eating habits. They've got to exercise, right? They've got to create a new life, new habits in order to have that new life that they want, okay? And it's going to go in phases. Just like it does for getting a patient healthy, that's what has to happen with your medical practice. So now we're going to go to stability phase. So stability phase is exactly that. Stability phase is you have at least 3 months of operating expenses in the bank. You have an ROI on your marketing. You're not worried about making payroll every 2 weeks. You're getting a $350 reimbursement rate on your insurance. If you're doing cash-based practices, you're selling your cash-based services for an average of $1,200 to $1,500 per patient as they come in. Then we can move to scale. Now, you can scale to having more locations or an increased size of facility or adding on more and more doctors when a couple of key things happen. First, you have to have 6 months in the bank, okay? You have to have systems and processes and procedures in place for how you onboard an employee, how you have a couple of PAs or nurse practitioners working for you so you're not handling the full patient and client load. All these things in scale then allow us to then make that jump into the promised land. The problem with today is that people are trying to just jump right into the promised land without going through the very particular steps and phases that you have to go through in order to get there. Now, how can I make such bold statements? Well, like I said just a few minutes ago, we've helped over 20 practices go through these phases in order to get them into the promised land. And scale isn't necessarily about adding another location. For some doctors, they don't want that headache. They just want a bigger location. Maybe they want to go from 2,000 square feet to 5,000 square feet and just be in one location. That's great. Okay, some doctors want to scale this and they want to build it out and they want to have multiple locations. Whatever you want to do, you can do that from your scale standpoint. So here's the thing. Here's the thing that I really want you to consider. Okay. Do you really want to stay in the wilderness? Okay. Do you want out of the wilderness? If you've come this far in this video, I am going to guess that you want to fix the problem. So before we can go any further and I can tell you how you can start to fix the problem, I need you to honestly answer one question and one question only. Okay, you ready? How important is it for you to fix this problem right now? Not in 2 months, not in 6 months, not in a year. Fix this problem right now. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest desire, I want you to rate yourself. Okay, just go ahead, take a minute, write that number down on a piece of paper somewhere. Okay, do you have it? All right, now I want you to take a look at that number. If that number, again, 1 being the lowest desire, 10 being the highest desire, that you want to fix this problem right now, okay? If that number is below 8, if that number is below 8, then I want you to just click off this video right now, okay? But if your desire is an 8, a 9, or a 10, and for some of you that might maybe wrote an 11, but if your desire to fix this problem now is an 8, 9, or a 10, what I want you to do is you're going to see a button that has just appeared right below here somewhere, and it's going to take you to a short little questionnaire. Now, don't click on it just yet, okay, because I want to explain something. Just like when your patient comes in, you ask them to fill out a medical questionnaire or a medical history, right? You want to know everything that they've done to try to fix the problem. You want to know what medications they've taken or are currently taking. You want to know what programs they've gone through. Have they talked to other doctors about this? Okay, those are the kind of questions that we're going to ask you. Here's the other thing. You would run a blood panel on that patient to see if you could help them. Sometimes there's patients that we just can't help we need to refer to somebody else. That's the same way it is with us here at Warner James. So first and foremost, you passed the first test. Your desire is an 8, 9, or a 10 to fix this problem right now. And what I mean right now, I mean right now, not in a month, not in 2 months. I'm talking right now, okay? The second thing is you'll need to fill out this questionnaire, and then we're going to be able to assess whether or not that we can help you, okay? That's just like an appointment with a doctor. When they book the appointment, so you're going to actually get another screen after you fill that out where you can book an appointment. You'll talk directly with me. My name is Matthew, and I'm going to go over your questionnaire. And that call may last 5-10 minutes. It may last up to 30 minutes, okay? But just like an appointment with one of your patients, I can go through there and we can check off a bunch of things and I can ask a few more clarifying questions and I can start to give you a prescription of how we can go about fixing your issue. And it doesn't matter if you're an insurance-based practice or a cash-based practice, or if you want to add cash-based procedures to your practice, okay? That's irrelevant right now. What's important is that you want to fix this. So take the time right now. I want you to click this button right down below and fill out the survey. And then you're going to be taken to a page where you can book a call, and we'll work to get you in the next day or two. And if we're unable to, then I'll actually just communicate with you directly to set up a time. So remember, folks, to get out of the wilderness, okay, to get out of the wilderness and into the promised land, there's a specific steps. We've got to assess where you are. And if you're in the survival mode or if you're in the stability mode, we're going to get you from step to step, or rock to rock, as we like to call it. And the last one, scale, moving into the promised land. I'm going to leave you with this last comment or question. There's two things you'll see behind me. You'll see behind me right over here. This little quote: the skills that got you out of Egypt are not the ones to get you into the promised land. I keep that in my office here, day in and day out. The last question I'm going to ask you, or comment I'm going to leave you with, is, I think it was Einstein that once said that the definition of crazy is doing the exact same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So if you're wandering around the wilderness and you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, then what I want you to do is stop doing that. If you have an insurance rate and reimbursement rate below $150, we can add $80 to $100 on that within literally a couple of weeks, okay? We can help you grow 2x, 3x, and 4x your practice in the next year because we've done it. So get out of the crazy mode, get out of the wilderness. Let's get you on the path to the promised land. I look forward to talking to you.